Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. In this episode, I welcome back my friend and SFG chief, Brett Jones. We chat conspiracy theories, fitness trends, and redefining strength. Brett teaches functional movement systems and kettlebells as the Director of Education for StrongFirst. We discuss overcoming common stereotypes with strength training so that we can all lead healthier lives. We also have a candid conversation on the state of the world today, from COVID-19 to the insurrection at the Capitol. In our 2020 episode, Brett shared his experience of battling cancer during the pandemic. It was great to catch up with him on his recovery and journey back to strength. I'm always amazed by Brett's physical and mental strength and learn from these conversations. I'm grateful he is a frequent guest on Culture Chat and would love to hear from all of you with any questions or comments about the episode. My favor, as usual, is to please continue to share this podcast with others, and it would also mean so much if you would leave me a rating and some feedback. If you'd like to help keep this podcast going and become a patron of the show, visit my website or patreon.com/sifumimichan. I'd appreciate the support. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at sifumimichan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Brett Jones.
Mimi, it's great to have a chance to be on again and to talk to you in the audience. And,
yes.
Let's see how 2021's going.
Well, we are only 1 month in, and I'm still it's not the new year yet, because February 12th, and we're recording this like on the 4th, is Chinese New Year. And so I get a little extra time for my New Year start.
Got it. I'm still just trying to make sense of having turned the page on the calendar, and seems some things from 2020 have followed us into 2021. But I've been telling people for a while now, and Groundhog's Day just happened, and of course the classic Bill Murray movie, and that's pandemic life as far as I'm concerned. It's a little bit of Groundhog's Day. I wake up, I work, I train, I eat, I sleep, I repeat, sort of thing. But it's been good. How are things down in Florida?
I can't ever really complain about things like the weather, but I can complain about Florida because, we're always Florida. So,
well, you had a very Florida day just the other day. Several things happening in Southern Florida.
Oh my goodness.
Just like,
it's kind of how I felt last year. And you and I were pretty open on this podcast. So I always talk a little bit of politics and stuff like that. I know you generally veer, but I was just hoping, okay, 2020 is done. We're into a new era. We're going to turn the page on some positive things that have been happening. And then it's like you said, 2021, we still kind of had all this dissonance. There's still dissonance. And it's like Florida constantly is in the news for something negative. I was like, just once. I want it to be like the Florida state did these amazing things, but
right.
It doesn't happen.
It's a journey.
It is. And, but yeah, it's frustrating. But like you said, it's a little bit of like that Groundhog's Day, where ever since the pandemic, life has just been kind of in this weird, I don't want to say standstill, but we kind of feel like we're in this bubble and we're all waiting to kind of get out of it. And I think that the world is restless, but us as Americans, we get extra restless because, of course, I believe anyway, in our culture, we lack a lot of patience.
Oh, yes. I would agree.
Yeah.
And on the political end of things, I think there's two things potentially to dive into, and we can try to keep them apolitical.
No, absolutely not. If you've heard any of my other guests on here, we do not steer away, but it's whatever you're comfortable with, sir.
Well, I think two of the things that have been kind of on my mind from a just general societal standpoint, conspiracy theories.
Okay.
And whataboutism. And I think that those two things have reached prevalence in society that's truly troubling.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theories used to truly be fringe thoughts, fringe things. Now they're seem
The
to have taken
majority.
on. Yeah, it's just bizarre.
Yeah.
You look at the number of people that believe in certain conspiracy theories regarding the election and things of that
Yes.
nature,
Yeah.
where
QAnon and
QAnon, oh
yeah.
my gosh. I mean, talk about something that is just nuts.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
It's where you think, supposedly a lot of people in this country think, oh, back in the times where we were all civil and whatnot. And that's where that would have been the minority thought. And like you said, it's kind of appalling that we are in a state where those ideas are so representative and connective with so many people. And I wonder, is that because of the media? Like a huge part of it, obviously, because of how it's portrayed, how it's sold, and I'm reading this book right now, and it's very World War II, and you can't help but compare the what I consider brainwashing and the
Mhm.
propaganda, and they go through these characters and why they feel connected to something. And it's not that I don't blame these people for not having like stronger minds of their own and really coming to better moral and ethical compasses. But I mean, you could see when leaders tap into people's darkest fears and hopes and dreams and then just mix that all up and then throw it into the media propaganda machine. It's history repeating.
Definitely. And we're inundated in an pardon me while I learn how to speak. We're inundated with those messages and images via social media now.
Yeah.
It's I think conspiracy theories had a harder time getting traction in the
Yeah.
past because you had to read a newspaper, or it had to make it onto some form of the major news networks in order to really get to a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Now, all you got to have is a social media account, and you can start to reach and influence a lot of people. And obviously, there's bad actors as far as foreign countries that are participating
Yeah.
in this sort of misinformation campaigns, the propaganda campaigns, just like you're referring to, that Goebbels and World War II were super effective at manipulating a
Yeah.
populace and getting those negative messages out there. It has this life of its own in social media, and it's really powerful because we're in these isolating times. That I just read a story of this woman who kind of found her way out of the QAnon conspiracy cult
Mm-hmm.
thing that's there,
Yeah.
and she's like, I all of a sudden I'm at home, I don't have a job, I start going on social media, I start seeing these messages, I start believing these messages,
Mm-hmm.
and it took quite a process for her to kind of find her way out. But we're definitely inundated and more easily influenced, I think, now because we have access to this nonstop stream of information, and then we kind of lack the ability at times to stop and think, wait a second, what
Yeah.
is that? Is that really happening?
And do you think it's also because there are less, because one with COVID, of course, but I think as time has gone on, there's like less true connectivity. Like we talk about that younger generation now that's coming up, and they communicate through social media, and it's all in texting and through their Instagrams or whatever, Snapchats and all these different accounts. Like back in the day, we wrote letters, and there was like a lot of thought put into that before you put your pen to paper, or you talk on the phone and there's lengthy conversations and there's deeper conversations. And within like the conversation you and I are having now, there's questions and answers
Mhm.
versus just here's my idea and I've put it out there and now everybody, just see what I'm doing. And there's a lot of not that back and forth. You're not getting well, why do you think that? And 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 maybe having people kind of come around a little more. Like I feel like we're all so connected yet, and there's a really great Netflix documentary on that, where we're so connected yet everyone's really lonely, and it's the loneliest time in society, which is so bizarre. But I think, have you also come across, not just from the politics side, but how even COVID has been politicized, but even how people are dealing with or believe in COVID, or how they decide to wear a mask or decide that they don't want to go to a 300-person wedding, and that has like torn relationships apart. It's become very polarizing, and I wonder if like, I wonder what the way back is from that. But I mean, have you found that, oh wow, someone I really respect or thought I knew really well, and we have totally different viewpoints on this, and it's very jarring and sad.
It is, and there's multiple layers in there, and I think one of the things is just this general distrust of traditional information sources. We were fed for the last 5 years. We were fed this line of the fake news media, and traditional sources of information were beginning to be looked at as misinformation sources, which is totally not the case. And so that's a big part of it. I think that starts this search for, well, where am I going to get my information? If I can no longer go to that source, where do I get my information? And so you go to these alternative sources, and people start just with these kind of nutso things. COVID was an easy misinformation target because we didn't know a lot in the beginning.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure this out. And so it was easy for some of these things to kind of get hold. And I've certainly seen friends and people that, it's you see them post certain things, or you see them say certain things, and it's just kind of like, wow, that's interesting that you would come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
But we also, in that polarization, we lack this ability to have civil disagreement and conversation.
Yeah.
And we definitely have reached a point where we put things out there to convince, not to discuss. And it's okay to disagree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we have two political parties for a reason, because there's some fundamental disagreements on how certain social or fiscal things should be enacted. Right. And that's normal, and we should have that discourse. But now it's to the point where if you disagree with me, you're the enemy. If you disagree with me, I must not like you, and we can't have conversation anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's okay to agree to disagree.
Exactly. Remember when that was a thing? Let's agree to disagree and move on and now have our tea.
Yeah. We can still go have a beer and relax.
Right,
And,
right.
It's the situation that I always point to is Reagan and Tip O'Neill, who were political. I mean, just really at loggerheads with almost
rivals,
everything politically. Yet there's pictures of them celebrating Tip O'Neill's birthday at the White House. And it's, they're kicking back, having a beer, they're laughing, they're having a good time. And they're bitter political rivals. Yeah. And can you imagine that these days?
Right.
No, you can't. And
no, I mean, the last president not that he was wanted there, but didn't go to the inauguration. I mean, and that's a formal, like a public formal event, not even just a social. But yeah, it's really sad, actually. And I think what's interesting about what you brought up is that like that looking back, how we've kind of changed from being able to have those conversations, not just in like these public figures, but amongst ourselves. Like it's really, I just think it's been like a really frustrating year in that regard, because like you said, it's the enemy. And what's interesting is that the actual enemies, this is what they wanted.
Right.
You are letting them win by letting them bring people apart for not what's trivial, but like things that could be discussed and could be civil. And it's become, like you said, it's like civil war. Like we are at odds in the US, and that is what the enemies who hate the United States want.
Absolutely. And, even within the States, I mean, you see this rise of white nationalism, white supremacy, just these awful hate groups and people that should never have a footing in society ever at all. And yet they're getting a footing in society. And part of that is everything that we're talking about. It's misinformation. It's this inundation of information via social media. it's people lacking trust in traditional sources and really, straying away from fact, because that's been,
Fact. What is
well,
that?
alternative facts. I mean, it was the second day of the previous administration where we had this term of alternative facts thrown at us, and clear lies became alternative facts.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
No, it was scary. And now if it doesn't even feel that long ago because there's so much media that's been jammed down our throat the last 4 or 5 years. And it was like the press conferences once after the inauguration were so different. It was kind of confusing. We're like, wait, this person's like respecting the journalist and speaking like clearly and concisely and it was just such a different tone.
Yeah.
And for me, it's what I found very refreshing because I couldn't, like, after the first week, I couldn't even watch press announcements or anything anymore because I would be just too angry. Like it was, it was a circus, and I'm like, this is dangerous. And as a result, I mean, look at what happened at the Capitol. Like this is dangerous for our country, and actually surprised it didn't happen sooner. But yeah, and my frustration is the like your parents, so like if there's something bad, there's a consequence, right? But yet there's so many people that don't have to live with consequences of their actions. And that's the thing that I think I get frustrated at as somebody who has been very disciplined all my life and very much like ingrained in me, like, no, you don't do this because then this happens. And it's like, well, I don't know. This example is showing me that there's no consequences or there's no repercussions. And I mean, unless like, whatever beliefs you have, maybe their soul is burning, but or whatever. But I kind of want to see those consequences live in this realm.
Well, and I think that's another area where social media and our current modes of interaction have almost encouraged that, because you can do a lot on social media with and our current modes of communication with no consequences. Mm-hmm. There's memes and different things out there where it's like, people are pretty discourteous these days because you're not going to get punched in the mouth via your keyboard. You used to not say certain things because you knew there was a consequence for saying that. And nowadays, you can have an anonymity or at least a perceived level of disconnect and safety to do whatever you want because nobody's coming through the keyboard at you. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's part of it too. And the tool that gets kind of used in all of this is this whataboutism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted you to expand on that.
You see it, and John Oliver, who I really like.
Yeah,
I think he's brilliant.
He is
in a variety of ways.
He actually does real journalism as well, even though it's like comedic. He does real journalism. There is stuff that they've been researching for a year, and they finally bring it together in an episode. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. No, I'm a huge fan, and I'm glad I have HBO Max, because apparently he's going to be on HBO Max now, and I don't know if he's going to be on the regular HBO. But he has a great thing on whataboutism, and it's actually an old Russian propaganda thing, and it's you bring something up, and so the response is not to address that thing; it's to say, well, what about this? Well, they took this person off Twitter, but what about this? They let this person stay on. And okay, so they should look at that, but it doesn't make this wrong.
Right.
Like this, and it's like John Oliver gives this example in the video where he's like, it'd be like a defense attorney for a murder suspect saying, well, what about Jeffrey Dahmer? What about Hannibal Lecter? What about some other serial killer? And it's like, well, I rest my case. Well, the fact that those people did that doesn't mean that this is right or wrong. Look at this situation. And so that's become just a massive tool, and you see it all the time. It go back to the Charlottesville and Trump and very fine people, and that's a form of whataboutism. Well, sure, we had these bad things, people, but what about this? Mm-hmm. And we had these things, but what about this?
Yeah,
and we get distracted. And that's one of the reasons it's hard to have good conversation, is if you interact with somebody who goes down the whataboutism rabbit hole, you keep getting pulled off of the topic. And it's very purposeful. It's meant to distract you from the original conversation. And so that's something to watch. I think it's just something to watch for as you interact with folks. And when you start calling people on their whataboutism, they get frustrated because they can't steer you from the original topic.
And they don't have an answer.
Exactly. Their answer is, well, what about this?
Yeah.
Cool. But if you want to have a conversation about that, we can do that later, but let's stay on this topic.
Yeah.
And, having to actually filter through, I just, that's, it was weaponized.
Yes.
Over the last 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. And the media taught people how to do that. I don't even think it was this conscious thing, like I'm using these amazing techniques. It's just they heard it all the time, because every time I saw, that girl, I can't stand Kellyanne Conway, she gets asked a question and then she answers it about someone completely different, or goes on to a different topic. I'm like, this is the master of it right here who got him elected. And like anytime you had, well, but look at what happened here. It was just totally didn't answer that question and didn't blink about it. And so like they teach their audience exactly what to do. And it's like you said, if you call people out, which I'm sure you have.
No, I never do that. I'm pretty, especially because I kind of recognize that, you can see it behind me on the wall. There's certain groups and organizations that I have a little bit of a presence within. And so when you make a statement, people start to perceive that as being part of that group or part of that thing. I'm actually allowed to have my own opinions and viewpoints that are
really?
independent.
You're like your own person?
Kind of.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So but I'm very careful of that from a social media standpoint, where, I could easily get on social media and rant and rave and get into arguments. And I've made my mistakes in the past. It's ineffective. It's wasted. I was going to say wasted breath, but it's usually wasted keystrokes. And, if I want to interact with somebody on something that's important, I'll typically call them. I did put a post up on January 6th because I found that to be, if that did not chill your soul as an American or anybody, if that did not chill your soul and really make you step back, there's a problem there. Like that's something that I think as an individual, you really need to think about the fact that you were okay with a group of people storming the Capitol and people dying and violence being perpetrated for the purpose of trying to prevent a lawful election from being finalized. Those are things we've seen over the years from countries that are struggling with their democracy, not what should be the shining light. And I just take politics out of it altogether, which of course you can't. But for the moment, let's do the mental experiment. It should still chill your soul that happened. And I actually had people immediately start to argue with me, and conspiracy theories. I mean, within moments of that thing happening, they were blaming it on other groups. They were the whataboutism had already started. Like it was immediate that it came together. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like first, if you believe those conspiracy theories, especially today, go away. I don't want to interact with you. You've now proven to me that you should not have an opinion on this. You're so far astray that you don't get to have an opinion on this. That was just jarring to me. That was really one of those days that shook me. Yeah. As a person, as an American.
Yeah, it was appalling. It was definitively appalling. And like you said, anybody who brushes it off, I think about, wow, what if they actually did get a hold of Nancy Pelosi, or like what? I mean, it was scary, and it was really violent and ugly and embarrassing, and just it was very shocking. So I'm with you there, and I guess because over the last year, especially, I've had these weekly conversations on this podcast with a great friend of mine, Greg Rucka, who's this phenomenal writer, and we get into it, and we obviously fall in line politically, so it becomes more of a rant and an echo chamber. But really, I've come to believe like you can take politics out of it because that's what I choose to do. And like you said, I have my opinion and I have who I decide that I am. And no one can tell me, well, you're just being a liberal or a Democrat or whatever. I'm like, no, I am being what I feel is morally and ethically correct. And I feel like that supersedes. I couldn't tell you what all the amendments are. I couldn't tell you the policy exactly on all the healthcare things, or or the fiscal taxes. I definitely have opinions, but I wouldn't say I'm like knowledgeable, right? But I can tell you what I think is right and wrong and how I was brought up, and culturally, like the acceptance of others and love and empathy of others. Like I don't see that as political, and so I always felt, especially in these last 4 years, that you know silence is complicit, and that's why I choose to be non-silent. And I honestly, you're good because you read like the responses to your stuff. Like I tend I tend to shy away unless I can see like, okay, this is just like a nice whatever, and I'll try to engage. But I'm really horrible at social media as it is. But like, that's what they're there to do. They probably just copied and pasted their little whatever to every single social media post they saw that day about anybody that had a negative thing to say about the Capitol, right? They were just like ready to go. I mean, that's what they're living for. And yeah, I think it's like you said, kind of like back to the whole playground days. Like, well, you wouldn't say this if you were standing in front of me, especially Brett Jones.
Yeah. I'm cuddly.
I've been watching you do your snatch press squat thing. Oh my God. I wouldn't call you cuddly.
I'm very cuddly. But
Your
just
cat's cuddly.
real quick on that other point, we used to have agreed upon rights and wrongs.
Mm-hmm.
Like we disagreed on how we were going to get there, but
Yeah.
we had agreements on what was right and what was wrong. And if you can look at what happened at the Capitol, if you can look at some of these conspiracy groups and you can say that that's okay, there's a massive problem there. That should never be. That should never be.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got to get back to accepting that there are rights and wrongs, and we can disagree on how we get there, but there should be some established rights and wrongs.
Mm-hmm.
And we've lost that. It's you can't take my opinion trumps the facts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to use truth because truth is, as certain sci-fi shows have indicated, it's a three-edged sword. Your side, your version, their version, and the actual truth. So it's always colored by our perceptions and things of that nature. But there are rights and wrongs, and it's okay to say that, and it's okay to hold people to that. And we got to get back to that to a certain extent. And I think that everyone should be able to look at what happened at the Capitol and say that was wrong. Period. And people that did it should suffer consequences. It was that was just inappropriate. That was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to say that. And it's okay for that to be out there. Yeah, I think that that's from just a general standpoint, the conspiracy theories. And I happen to follow Andy Borowitz on Facebook, and I don't know if you follow Andy Borowitz. He's a satirical writer for New York Times, I believe, and he's had some hilarious stuff over the last few years. There's been easy fodder for a satirical
I'm
writer.
sure.
But it's now with the whole crazy QAnon, blue this QAnon theory that there's these Jewish space lasers that started the fires, and that there's all this stuff going on. Like, it's so nuts that you would hope that was satirical writing. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that's somebody that haha, good one. But no, that's an actual thought that these people buy into.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier, you mentioned, like, how do we turn this?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
When you have 35-40% of the population who in some fashion buys into some of these conspiracy theories and they reject any form of information that doesn't fit into that, how do you make a change in that?
Mm.
How do you bring about that sort of, oh, well, that was silly. Like, oh, I'm sure glad I found my way out of that one. Um, how do you do that?
Yeah.
I don't know, because you have those individuals that have bought into this, conspiracy theory. And okay, like there was a group of people out there that didn't believe we landed on the moon.
Right.
Okay, haha, like the good conspiracy theory.
Hmm.
Um, but now it's just reached this whole other level, and I don't know how you reach those people.
Yeah. It's this ongoing struggle I think we were stuck with for quite a while. I, in some really, really small way, like I look at the results of the Georgia elections and think, that whole grassroots, that whole just hitting the ground and really reaching the people and doing something which I think was unbelievably historic. I hope that that's something that we can all take kind of an example of, like there was human connectivity that was happening there, right? So I think that that's a big part of it, and kind of going back to that, even though we have social media, I think this human connectivity thing is missing, because at the end of the day, a lot of the people that do share these opinions, they're not really necessarily evil, bad people. They're really, really misinformed or have lost their way in some way. Some of them are evil and bad people. Let me be clear on that, listeners. But
Absolutely.
I feel like, and this sounds like maybe idealistic or maybe hopeful or whatever, and slightly optimistic. I don't know who I am today, but things like what you do, right? Like teaching people to feel better about themselves, get stronger, be healthier, be a part of a positive community. I know through COVID, people have told me that the way we've been able to safely conduct classes and make them feel like they're back in touch with other humans from a physical distance, but being a part of something together and having something to look forward to, and not just being on the Zoom thing. And I mean, in Florida, we're very lucky. Like it's sunny pretty much all the time. We can be outside and we can do things safely. But like, I think, and I know I'm in Florida, as you know, so probably 50% of the people are probably having some of these conspiracy theories or don't believe the election was real. And they're probably at my school and they probably just choose not to listen to this because they don't want to hear me. But the thing is, there's a respect though, right? So we
Yeah.
still have a respect. And so we can build on that. And so maybe that sounds hopeful, but I do believe, especially, you know, your leadership, things that you do, you reach people, and it does make a difference. And you talking about it publicly does make a difference, because they're like, wow, well, that Brett Jones guy is really, really smart when it comes to FMS and how my hip can be a little more mobile. So maybe he makes sense of this too now. But you know what I mean? Like, I really do think that this is important. These conversations are important.
Definitely. And so I agree with your optimism that there were some real grassroots things that were happening and people connecting and interacting. And then I'm going to throw the other side of the equation in there, because out of Georgia, we have this QAnon theorist who is now in Congress. So
Yeah, that's true.
the the
We're
the,
working
the
on that though.
right, the yin and yang and
Yes.
the positive and negative are
Yes.
always present.
This is
And
true.
we have a long way to go and a lot of
Yeah.
work to do. And to that point, with COVID, with the isolation, physical health should be taking more of a priority in people's lives. And that's something that I think is, we should be receiving a wake up call, in that we know that people that are more physically fit, who do not have obesity and comorbidities,
Mm-hmm.
we know those people do better in a situation like COVID or any illness
Yep.
situation. To the, with my cancer last year, and it was rough. It was, my wife will remind me that, nobody knows the hell that I went through, except for her. And she's right. I
Yeah.
didn't talk about it a lot. And, it was rough. It was hell at a certain point. And, I lost over 40 pounds, and I really had to start over in my training and everything. But I went in physically strong.
Yep.
And was able to survive the treatment and have a good outcome. There are people who are so deconditioned or already have so many comorbidities, they can't even get the treatment.
Yeah.
Because they know they won't survive it. So we should be at a point where we're getting this wake up call that being physically fit, and I was talking about this recently with another group, that physical fitness is one of those things that has been mocked, and so it gets mocked. It becomes something that's societally okay, and then it's mocked, and then it's societally okay, and it's been this thing through the decades, through the years, that we had the 50s, and the 50s were this golden age of bodybuilding, and Dave Draper, and we have these folks, Tommy Kono and Paul Anderson, and we have strength and physique that is okay. It's looked up to. And then we get into more of the Vietnam era, and societal upheaval, and physicality is now a bad thing because that's associated with war. And so that there's a dip. And then we get into the 80s, and we have these bodybuilding style heroes on media, on films and whatnot. And so it's again cool to be fit, and then that's mocked again. And so we're in this very normal waviness of physicality being okay. And I think that we should all just recognize that there's actually it's George Hackenschmidt, an old strongman, said strength cannot be divorced from health. Mm-hmm. And health should not be divorced from strength. I added that last part. He said the first part. I added the second part.
Addendum, Brett Jones.
Addendum. But I think that so we at a certain point have to realize that being physically fit, being physically capable is just something that as a human being that gets to drive this meat suitcase around the universe, we should be physically fit. And it's not negative. It's not attached to, there's this ongoing conversation with toxic masculinity, and unfortunately that too many times gets twisted into masculinity being toxic, and that's just not the case. Do people take it to a negative extreme? Is there such a thing as toxic masculinity? Yes, but that doesn't mean masculinity is toxic. Mm-hmm. Like there's a different conversation to be had there. And then just from a base physical standpoint, I think it was Socrates said, it's a shame that someone grows to an old age without having found out what their body's capable of. And I'm paraphrasing. That's not exactly, he said it in a far more eloquent and
I think he did a great job of paraphrasing.
But I think that's something that people should embrace a little bit more, and being physically confident and being physically fit, it should be a positive. It should be something that enhances all of our lives and helps us out from a societal standpoint. I actually think that's one of the reasons some of these conspiracy theories and things that we've been talking about kind of take root, in that you have this unspoken but kind of innate insecurity. And so it's easier to join with these groups and have this false bravado that substitutes for that. And I've been fortunate in that I've been honored to work with various members of different spec ops and military groups and law enforcement groups. And there is a quiet confidence to people who know who are physically capable. Mm-hmm. There's a quiet confidence there that kind of rules the day. And that's what I shoot for. I want to be physically fit so that I can do the best for my family, so that I can do the best for the people that I work with, and helping people move better and feel better. So the call towards being more physically fit is not this stylized false bravado. It's simply being physically capable and being fit enough and not having comorbidities. And there are comorbidities that we don't ask for. I fully understand that. There's
Yes,
people that,
you fully understand that.
yes, definitely. I've had my experience with
Yes.
a couple of those,
Yeah.
and but I think it's something that, and you talk to Greg all the time, and there's this connection into the more Comic-Con and that world of these larger than life heroes and characters and all of these things. Like, there's a version of that for the individual that's something to shoot for. Nobody needs to be the Hulk.
Yeah.
There's
There's a downside of being the Hulk also.
there's
Although he's pretty damn cool.
just paying for new clothes all the time is bad enough.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think even, for Oscar, when he coaches, he's always like, find your inner superhero, like be that person for yourself. And I'm 100% with you. There's so much that you said there that I want to tap into. One is, for listeners that didn't listen to the last episode of the amazing Brett Jones, like, you were so kind and open and honest to be sharing that very difficult experience of surviving cancer through COVID and all the treatments. And you talked in depth about that. So I won't make you relive that, but I did want to say, like, and I told you a little bit off air and I was teasing you, but in all honesty, it's been unbelievably inspiring to watch you. Like, I don't know. I feel like you're stronger than you were before you had the cancer. Like, I'm watching you do these physical exercises, and then it's like this times 40, like 40. And I'm like, what? I barely could do 4 sets of like 10% of that. And I get that you are Brett Jones, but still, it's like just so inspiring and so motivating. And I always found it amazing that you would always, share so much, because you used to put like your full workouts on your website and your blogs, and used to always be very, very open with that. And then just seeing you kind of like, after everything you went through last year, just seeing you stronger than ever is a little bit annoying, to be honest. No, inspiring, but yeah, it's been really wonderful. And the thing you just mentioned about fitness is interesting, because Oscar just started this challenge with some of his clients and saying, hey, let's do this. We're not really big on New Year resolutions, but for some reason in January, everyone decides to show back up to the gym, and kind of like in their mind, something happens, right? So we're just trying to take advantage of that so that we can help propel them. And there is something that clicks, but in terms of saying, yes, let's get more fit. Like, do you find the same thing where immediately, especially when it comes to nutrition and then lifting weights, that resistance, like they're resistant. There's an immediate, like, an excuse to not want to do it. And like you said, it falls into insecurity and their relationship with whatever it is with their body or how they eat. And there's like that disconnect. And so it's easier to then, I'll just keep going down this path versus, taking that physical path. And so one is, I think there's that resistance to it. And then you were talking about John Oliver, also on HBO. We have Bill Maher, who has like been saying for months and months and months, like, hey, we need to be open enough to admit obesity is bad. Like, we're not fat shaming people. We're not telling people about body image. We're telling you that if you are overweight to the point where it's going to cause diabetes, all these other issues, it's not going to be good for if you get COVID, right? Like, it is, I think there's just something where there's that societal pressure too of like, well, we don't want to tell people you look unhealthy or you are unhealthy. And then that plays into the resistance to fitness as well, right? Like, there's just that insecurity. And so as a professional, as like, this is what you do, it's like, how do you kind of help reframe that for someone who is obese and maybe in a little denial, and then does say they want to get fit, but then you say, well, can you eat more protein and veggies? And they're like, oh, I hate protein.
Well, I'm gonna peel this back on a few layers, because physicality in general, we tend to come out of high school, which are these incredibly formative years, with either a very negative perception of physicality, either because of bullying or because of somebody. The classic would be, the mean gym teacher that made somebody, do something, and all of a sudden you hate exercise, right? Yeah. And so we kind of come out of these formative years actually with very little information on how to manage this thing, this machine, meat suitcase, like I referred to it earlier. We come out with very little information on how to run and manage this machine. And tied to that is typically some of these negative experiences where somebody's been bullied or somebody had a bad experience with some physicality. And so that's something that's just kind of written off. It's has this negative concept and perception for those individuals. I came out of high school with a little different experience in that we certainly had some issues in typical dysfunctional family and stuff happening at home, and being physically fit or being physically strong was an escape for me. And so there's, if I peel back my own psychological layers, there's a reason I focus so much on strength. Because it got me through some very challenging times in my youth and was a coping mechanism. And so, whereas other people had a negative experience and now reject physicality.
Yeah.
And so that's for a lot of these people, peeling back those layers. One of the things that Dr. Phil has said that is actually a good little quip is it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. There's usually some sort of root to some of these decisions and things that we're going through. And we just, like I said, we just tend to come out of these formative years either with no information or bad information, or a negative experience, which results in us rejecting it as we move forward in life. And one of the things that doesn't help is there's this thing called aspirational marketing. Okay, where you're supposed to show this thing that people should aspire to be. That is oil and water for people that have had these bad experiences, for people that don't have a good relationship with either their body or physicality in general. When you try to go with this aspirational marketing thing and you try to be aspirational, and you see this all the time in the fitness world, right? And this is a really fantastic conversation, because the reality is, and this is the comment from everyone, well, I know I should exercise. Well, I know I should do this, but they don't do it. So we have this recognition that being physically fit, being, managing the body is a good thing. But yet we have more obesity, we have more illness, we have more issues with managing our body than ever before. And so the percentage of people that exercise is very small. And so when you go down this route of aspirational marketing, which I despise.
Yeah. And now it's even worse with the social media, because you get bikini, like models that aren't actual fitness people. They're just models. Absolutely.
I followed the hashtag personal trainer on Instagram, and it's disheartening.
Yeah.
For many of those people that use that hashtag, pretty sure they're not selling personal training as part of their services. But so, peeling this thing back and realizing that for most people, there's this negative thing that they're not even aware of. They've rejected physicality. And I'm assuming that's a word. I just like using it. So they reject physicality because of some of these initial experiences. And then when they do try to get fit, or they go to the gym, or they do something, they run into this aspirational marketing. They run into people that are going to shame them for not knowing what they're doing. And it's like, this, get over yourself, drop the marketing for a minute, and help the human being that's in front of you. And try to find a positive experience. Find something that we enjoy doing and build from there. Because here's the biggest fitness secret in the world. Just do work. That's it. If you will just do work that doesn't hurt you, you will succeed over time.
Yeah.
And that's when, you've mentioned, my training and stuff since coming back from the cancer treatment and everything. And really, people will ask me, how's your programming? Like, what are you doing for your programming? My programming is do work.
It's magic.
It's magic. I do something And sometimes I want a sustained effort, and sometimes I want a shorter effort, but I do work. And so, finding those things that connect with people, that resonate with people, and encouraging them in that direction to have a more positive relationship. And I will say that strength is one of those, if you want to talk about a hack or a shortcut, building strength is, in my opinion, the hack or the shortcut towards more confidence, towards a better relationship with your physicality. And it's something that we typically don't do a good job. We'll get the message on cardio. Everybody should do some form of cardio for X number of minutes per week, and da 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 da. And we just don't get the same message on building strength. And so, if everybody right now listening to this podcast, when I say building strength, close your eyes and think about the first thing that pops into your head. What was it?
Yeah, but because you mentioned earlier that whole 80s thing, I was just like did you see that movie, No Pain, No Gain?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
It's like those guys just popped into my head. It's so embarrassing.
No.
Obviously, yeah.
Perfect. Because we have such a societal, ingrained negative response to that word. Strength is a negative. People will typically see some sort of stylized, huge bodybuilder who they probably had a bad experience with a bully earlier in their life. So they'll see this either stylized kind of bodybuilding, sort of very what they perceive to be physically aggressive person, or they see the power lifter who's picking up a max weight, bleeding from their nose, and just blowing snot and chalk, and having this thing happen when they're trying to pull this max attempt. So that sort of mindset, even from someone like yourself, who has such amazing physical abilities, that can do the things you do from a martial arts standpoint, teach the things that you teach from a martial arts standpoint. Even for you, when you sat there and thought about strength, a negative perception popped into your head. And that's why the message is so hard. And I think that's one of the reasons people struggle so much with their physicality, is their first response, their mental response to, I want you to be a strong person. It's negative. They see something that they don't want to be. And that's a massive hurdle.
Yeah. I think that's also the resistance, right? Like, I mean, and in all honesty, like, I think when I do think about it, it's like, well, lately, especially because, I was actually going to take this whole hour to be like, oh, Brett Jones, here's what I want to talk to you about. When I do my get up, and totally just take advantage of the time on our podcast to just have it like completely benefit me in my strength training. But yeah,
absolutely do that.
Don't tempt me. But it is true, because it's like you think about bodybuilding and the word strength goes with that. And like you said, it's such a different thing, because strength and bodybuilding isn't the same thing. You do build your body, right? But that image of bodybuilding for hypertrophy, like just kind of get that sculpting and everything. And especially as a woman, Oscar always gets that resistance. Well, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to get like super huge muscles. And he's like, let me just tell you, it's not going to happen. Unless you are like in this gym all day, every day, and eating like thousands of, it's such a misconception still. Like you said, that you would think by now we were over that, right? And I've been fortunate to be surrounded by and educated by so many people who has helped me redefine that, and understanding that something as simple as I'll take the get up, because it's like was my least favorite exercise ever when Oscar first made me do this thing, because I have the scoliosis and I've had like, issues. And I think I've told you this before anyway. And I was just like, oh, this is horrible. I couldn't even hold like a water bottle, like a little plastic, 16-ounce thing to do it, or my shoe or whatever. It was like horrific. And then I finally built up to do something that was pretty substantial. course, I've lost that, but I'm building it back up. I'm past the water bottle. Like
There you go.
I'm working my way back to like the 16. So
Awesome.
it's just funny though, because you feel strong when
Mhm.
you're able to get up off the ground, and then you have, like some resistance. But essentially what's great about something like that is it's not useless. Like, you need to be able to get up off the ground for the rest of your life. And so if you've done that, where you've trained yourself, and that's one of his favorite and my favorite exercise for like seniors and things like that. Like, hey, you need to be able to get up and off the ground. Like, that's just such a basic thing. But like a movement like that isn't associated with strength at all.
Right. It's something unique. And if you look at it from a more senior population standpoint, number one fear, falling.
Mm-hmm.
Number two fear, not being able to get up.
Get it. Yep.
So this helps with both of those things. But I think that retooling or recrafting of that message to where it is more just about being physically capable
Mm-hmm.
is an important one. And it's, physicality. There's, again, societally, we wave in and out of this being cool, this being not being cool, and for a variety of reasons. You said something that I was going to key on there for a second, and of course
You're going to cue my get up. So let me
Squirrel.
warm up here. And I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Next time.
I'm actually very fortunate. Listeners don't realize, but Chief Brett Jones here also, he coaches Oscar, and I get to be like a fly on the wall. And basically, over the last year or so, I was like, I guess I should finally get back into it now that I'm getting all these amazing notes by watching you're watching his sessions. I'm like, wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about.
I have my moments. But I think that strength. So if we begin to divorce strength from the look.
Yes.
So if we start to separate those things, some of the strongest people I know in my life have never lifted a weight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I may have mentioned before, my grandmother has survived the death of 2 husbands, the suicide of 2 children, knee replacement, pacemaker, terminal cancer, and continues.
Yeah.
And I talking to her a while back, and I said, how do you do it?
Mm-hmm.
Like you've had all these things, and she goes, I can see her face, pausing and saying, well, you live till you die. Like you don't get to stop. Like we're all gonna struggle. We're all gonna suffer. That's just part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Your response to that and your ability to continue on, that's strength.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about, people out there that are struggling with this, they're actually displaying strength in a variety of ways. It may not be targeted in the best direction. So when you're that person that wakes up and you shouldn't be doing something, you shouldn't be having donuts for breakfast or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case may be, but you continue to do that, you're committed. You're showing some commitment to that particular strategy. So you can commit yourself to a different strategy.
Yes.
You've shown that you can commit. It's not pointed in the right direction, but you've shown you can commit.
Exactly. It's there. There's potential.
Yeah, let's start making that change. And strength. Find your own version of that. For me, it's kettlebells. It was bending nails. It was
Mm-hmm.
a variety of things. For other people, it's dance.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, it is rucking. For other people, it's find your thing. And obviously, I think a well-rounded program is always a good idea. But changing that relationship, thinking. I hope everybody does that mental experiment of think of strength, and what's the first thing that pops in your head?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a negative thing, you have an opportunity to change that, because your awareness that is a negative response is the first step. You may not even be aware of it.
Yeah, no, completely.
Yeah. And so when somebody says, oh, you should get strong, you should get fit, if the image that pops up in your head is something negative, yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm thinking at least 9 times out of 10 for people because they're so
Mhm.
like even people like you said that are already in programs or already joined the personal training, they're part of it. They want to do it, but there's a resistance. And then, like you said, you have to peel back and figure out why. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even imagine this, but I've totally have body image issues, and which is why like I still have a negative relationship with strength in some ways, right? Like
Sure.
it is not something that I would say comes easy, even though I've been a martial artist my whole life, right? I don't, interestingly enough, don't correlate it the same. Although, yes, a lot of people be like, well, Mimi's strong. She's a kung fu person, right? But that I just think of it as like that's a separate thing, right? And
Right.
so it's how do you kind of find that connection and stuff. So I don't want to take up too much of your time because I could probably talk to you forever. But I mean, it wouldn't be our conversation if I didn't ask you things like what you've been reading or watching on TV or, what kind of fun things you've been doing for distraction.
So continued food shows. So
Yes.
definitely still watching diners, drive-ins, and dives, and guys' grocery games. And if I could sit down and have a beer with Guy Fieri, I would really enjoy that.
Really?
Oh, he just seems like such a just a cool guy that's
Yeah.
had a lot of success, a lot of but it's all based on food and doing the best for
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
We actually started watching Everest Beyond the Limit,
Okay.
and so it's a documentary, basically of these people climbing
Climbing.
Everest, and I had no idea that it was the thing that it is,
Yeah.
and that it's 3 months or more a commitment of actually being there
Wow.
to summit. Like you
Mhm.
watch Into Thin Air and you see, some of the tragedy and difficulty, but you don't realize that's a 3 month process. And
Mhm.
and it's been fascinating to kind
Wow.
of watch it. And you see some very interesting psychology in
Sure.
it. The people that are willing to do this for the variety of reasons they
Yeah.
feel they need to accomplish that is very interesting to me. And it was my wife and I were watching it, and the obviously the concept of challenge comes up, being
Mhm.
challenged and taking on
Mhm.
this challenge. And I'm just sitting there thinking, yeah, I've been challenged enough. I don't need to take on Everest. I would say my Everest has been cancer and some of the
Yeah.
different
Yeah,
things
for
that I've taken
sure.
on in my life. And people probably need to give themselves credit a little bit more for their
Mhm.
personal Everests,
Yeah.
if that's even a word, for their personal Everest, that they've overcome something tremendous, and that is a display of strength. And I tend to I when somebody tags me in a challenge, you'll get these things going around social media, right? Where somebody's like, well, here's a challenge, and I nominate da 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 da.
Yes, yes.
There is zero chance I'm going to do that. Um, that's just not like, even when the ice bucket thing went around,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if you read that, it's donate or
Right,
dump
right.
dump ice water over yourself. Well, I donated.
Yeah.
I I didn't need to dump the ice water over
Good to
myself.
know. Zero chance Brett Jones is going to do any of these social media challenges.
And that's just me. For
Yes,
other
yes.
people, that is the moment of change when they take
Yeah,
on a
yeah.
challenge like that.
Well,
I
but you're right. There's something about the word challenge because Oscar just issued this, challenge, and it made people want to do it because it was called a challenge, right? And not to disparage, because I think, oh my God, it's amazing these people are climbing Mount Everest and doing this thing, but you got to be a little bit crazy. So, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but you've got to be a little off. Did you see Free Solo?
oh yeah,
Like
oh
that
yeah,
guy's a little bit crazy, right? Like he's obviously a little bit crazy. I mean, in the most athletic and daredevil, whatever. But I mean, you got to be a little bit crazy to do this.
absolutely. And the one of the things that he talks about in there is from his mom. One of the sayings from his mom was, "Good enough isn't."
Mm-hmm.
And so his
Mm-hmm.
pursuit of perfection, and
Yeah.
for him, climbing is the pursuit of perfection, and this good enough isn't. So he's always pushing for
Yeah.
that next achievement, that next perfection. But it's there's an interesting psychology to all of these things that we choose to take on.
Definitely.
And I maybe I'm selling myself short, and I'm not taking on challenges that I should be taking on. But
I think your plate's full.
I, I'm good for the moment. Maybe in a few years I'll take on another one. But but yet I train. I make progress. I continue to achieve things physically. It has been very interesting for me. I've restarted my training many times.
Yeah.
I've had
From
different
rehab and injuries and
yeah.
surgeries and yeah.
I had my knee scoped in late 2019,
Yeah.
and was getting back to training when cancer and all that stuff, and went into treatment strong and whatnot. So I've restarted my training many times for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But this was starting from zero for me. Now, starting from zero for me was, using the 24 kilo bell and getting back into some swings and get ups and
annoying.
And like
no, just kidding.
I've always been a little
you worked for that and you had a foundation.
Yes.
So yes, for you zero, but it's because you built such a strong foundation. I mean, from before. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
you
that's
had already put in the work. It's not magical.
Right. Well, and I joke all the time. I'm strong enough to hurt myself. I know how to produce force. I know how to be strong.
Yeah.
It's just something that I enjoy. And this journey of getting back to a point where I feel like I'm physically capable and back to where I want to be has been it's been wonderful. I've gotten to rediscover things. I've gotten to learn things again. And it's been a great journey. And so I'm just looking to continue that and to your point earlier, to help others with that.
Do you feel, and if you have to run, let me know, but do you feel like, because essentially the kettlebell work, which is your area of expertise, I know you have many areas, but like that's your core, right? I mean, essentially there's only X amount of moves. It's not like there's a zillion, we've seen a zillion weird things on the internets, which I think we should not do with kettlebells. There's been some really funny things, but essentially it's like, oh, I'm doing this clean again. And so when you go to rediscover, and I know from StrongFirst standpoint, just vicariously through Oscar, like you guys at your certs and stuff, okay, now we've realized here's a little tweak, here's a thing, here's a technique that we'd like you to do instead of this because of new science or new whatever. So when you go to relearn or rediscover, like, have you found a lot of, I don't know if variations is the word, but have you discovered a lot of new things? Like, oh, are we going to be seeing new things at the next cert from your work, basically? I guess
we're going to see some changes in snatch technique. And that's, a combination of working with one of our instructors named Tim Almond and kind of my own personal journey of getting back to snatching and things of that nature. I think every rep is an opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And I may have mentioned this on previous podcasts, but Dr. Ed Thomas, who I was fortunate to learn Indian clubs from and things like that, he said, I never went to the gym to work out. I went to the gym to learn.
Yeah.
There's obviously a martial arts foil to this, where you go in to practice your katas and you learn the next technique, or you enhance your ability to throw a front kick, or some of the most basic techniques. You're always on a journey to do that just a little bit better.
Absolutely.
And so that's the same journey that I'm on as far as cleaning a kettlebell. Like, how can I make that just this smooth motion that gets me prepared for the press or squat or whatever I want to do. So that's another one of those changes in mindset where I am accomplishing the building of strength and being physically fit, but I'm doing it by enhancing my skill and practicing these techniques. And if you look at different things that people achieve high skill in, there was a quote from a famous cellist whose name I can't remember, somebody asked him why he was still practicing at like the age of 92. And his answer was, because I think I'm starting to make progress.
Something my dad would say.
Yeah. But embracing that journey, embracing that process is part of being successful in it. And I think we all know this at our heart, that we're a lot of things that there is a Groundhog's Day or a time to make the donuts sort of thing that you have to embrace when you're going to pursue an endeavor, whatever that endeavor is. We've been kind of lied to in that we should be entertained, and this should be all fun. Well, fun is results. Fun is looking back at some of my first workouts, after treatment, and then realizing where I am now. That's fun. So there's just different ways to tweak that perception, and it's about learning.
Awesome. Well, I will save everything else for our next conversation, which you have to come back for since you're a recurring guest now.
I'm in, and next time you're on the hook for doing it.
Oh my gosh! I'll have to now. I'll have to warm up. It takes me like half an hour these days, but always a pleasure, and I'm always learning from you as well. So I appreciate that. Thanks so much for the conversation.
No, thank you so much, Mimi, and all the best to you and your audience.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat, and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com, or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.